Okay, Sunniva, what have we got?
So we're fitting a duck foot to this French horn. The player was having experienced some problems with the weight being held on the little finger, and then you can have a duck foot fit, which basically gives you a bit of weight put on here. So you have this little paddle that sits in this little holder that we're going to solder on to this area here. We now measured up with the player and found that we need it very close to this brace here to allow for enough adjustment for his hand, also as he grows. So yeah, we're just preparing the area to be soldered on and see how it goes. Okay, so we've clamped it on. We found exactly the same place we set it up in the first place. We've removed some of the lacquer and also scratched up the surface of the part itself, so that the solder and flux will take properly, and just padded the back of this solder clip so that we don't scratch the metal anywhere, and we're ready to solder. It's always a bit hard to set up these to solder due to the shape of the horn, but you should just rest it like this. We can go in with flux and then solder to get it set on. So we've put on a tiny bit of flux that we're just going to melt into the joint, and I always put a bit of flux onto my solder as well, so I can use that as an applicator. I'm going to start heating it up. With these, it's a pretty big piece of metal here, so it can be a bit slow to heat it all up, and you have to take care that we don't burn too much of the lacquer. We always make sure to let people know that lacquer can burn when we do soldering work. Most lacquer is baked on in the first place, so the heat will have a big effect. You can see flux is readily melting. Just make sure it actually sits in the joint. Flux works. It's usually acid based, and it just cleans up the surface, allowing the solder to feed in. I'm trying to look for a change of color in the metal, which usually alerts me to that the solder is or it's hot enough for the solder to run. It's the main metal bit here that needs to be hot enough. As we know, the tubes are so thin, they'll heat up much quicker. We have the solder being hot enough, and the middle piece is hot enough. Just try and run that solder in.
So we do quite a few custom additions, don't we, for people, for comfort reasons or for weight balance?
Yes, absolutely. It's a big part of playing, to the fact that you're actually holding the instrument. Different makes and models will feel different to different people. Some people really get along with some models, some not. The problem is when you like the sound of an instrument, but maybe not the feel. We can often find solutions to help with both balance and weight, but also hand shape or how people hold instruments. A lot of customization is out there available. So a little click there, that's just it's setting in. We're getting there. And I wonder if that's getting there. Let's see. It's fully soldered on one side. I might have to reposition it to get this little blob of solder run all the way up. The solder follows the heat, so I'm going to have to turn it around. But it will definitely get there. We can clean it up a bit and make sure it fits for the player. So, here's the piece soldered on. We've found that this is the best angle for the player, although the duck foot is actually on a ball joint, so I'd go like this. So you can see here we have some scalding from the heat, and the flux also has quite an impact on how the lacquer behaves under heat. So we need to take some of this excess solder off, but also clean up these scalding marks here. What we usually do first of all is clean it off with a dry cloth, And then we have this, which is Tripoli. It's made from a type of sand mixed with oil to make this hard polishing substance, which we can rub onto cloth or ragging strips. And it's a very soft abrasive that shines up even brass lacquer without taking off. So we can go in and just polish up parts that are scalded, and it can take off the worst burnt lacquer, but also just polish up parts around it which we don't want to remove. And that can make an awful lot of difference after a soldering job. How you clean up has always an impact on the finished project.
So we're just cleaning up Sunniva there.
Yeah, we're just removing some of the excess solder. One side of the solder decided to flow on the outside, and I couldn't pull it in before adding a bit too much. So I have to remove some of the excess solder just for cosmetic reasons, really. So I'm just using a very hardened and sharpened scraper, triangular blade. This one I made myself, so it's perfect for this job, and I know it very well. But it's just good to get into those corners. What's good is that the solder is so soft. Although we always use lead-free solder for these joints because it needs to be strong. The tin is still so much softer than the brass, so you can kind of feel on the resistance of the scraper when you come to the base metal, as it will feel different. So obviously it takes some practice to get to know, but so I'm just gonna patiently scrape my way through all the layers of solder here. Then we'll give it a final clean up, assemble it, and make sure it fits well for the player. And now we have it back in the player's hands, all cleaned up, ready to go.